Hi, this is Dallas Mount with the University of Wyoming Extension Service. Do you want to protect the health of your land? Do you want to prevent weeds from coming in and dominating your property? Do you want your land to produce lots of forage for grazing animals and wildlife? If so, I've got a few tips to share with you that will help you manage your forage to have a productive, healthy stand of land. The three things that we're going to talk about when you think about grazing your forage are frequency, intensity, and opportunity for growth. And we're going to think about these from the perspective of the grass that you want to encourage on your land. For this area, we've got a nice stand of tall wheatgrass. And this is a very highly productive grass that works well in areas that have alkaline soils and maybe some high moisture tables. So this is a cool season perennial grass. And for most areas in Wyoming, our cool season perennial grasses are our most important forage producers for areas. Cool season grasses start growing maybe towards the end of March or in April, and they grow pretty well till about the 1st to the middle of June. And then they produce seed heads and they go to a semi-dormant state for the hot months of July and August, and then have some regrowth into the fall, and then go dormant throughout the winter time. These are different from our warm season grasses, which wait until the soil temperatures warm up quite a bit more before they start their growth pattern, usually in June, and then they grow the months of July and August. But generally they're not as productive forage producers as our cool season grasses. So we're going to think about managing our cool season grasses and encouraging them to be the most productive. So let's talk about how frequency of grazing, intensity of grazing, and allowing opportunity for growth and regrowth affects these plants. So let's talk with a discussion about frequency. And frequency is really how many times is that plant grazed in a growing season. For the areas in Wyoming, most areas that don't have irrigation, you want your plants to be grazed about one time during that growing season. And what happens is, if an animal comes to this area and they choose the lowest growing, most luscious plants, and they graze those plants off, leaving behind the taller plants, and then they wait about 10 days in the fast growing season, maybe 30 days in the slower growing season, and come back to the same area again, what's going to have happened? Well, these shorter plants are going to have regrown a little bit, and these taller plants have going to gotten taller. So what will the animal choose? Well, they're probably going to choose the lower, most nutritious, most palatable plants and regraze those, leaving behind these taller plants as ungrazed. So there becomes a problem. Some plants get grazed multiple times, and other plants don't get grazed at all. So managing the frequency of grazing is an important key. In this area that I'm sitting here, what happened here is the animals came in here and grazed this area repeated, and then didn't graze some of these areas around me with the taller plants. So it had a spot grazing occurred. And what came into these areas where the spot grazing occurred were annual weeds such as this kochia. And the grasses became less vigorous and they moved their way out. So if you have areas where you have undesirable plants surrounded by areas with taller, more desirable plants, then you need to do a better job managing the frequency of grazing in your pasture. The next question to ask is, how intensely are you grazing the forage? Are you leaving residual forage behind? How tall is it? Are you grazing 50% of that year's growth, or 60, or 80, or 90? The area behind me is grazed fairly unintensively. There's a lot of this year's forage remaining. The area in front of me has been grazed much more intensely. What is your pasture as a whole? Do you take off the entire growing season's forage production, or do you leave some to protect those plants for the wintertime, to allow them some leaf material to produce energy to regrow? How intensively are you grazing your pasture? The old rule of thumb is graze half, leave half. And while that may oversimplify it, it's an easy rule to remember. So leaving some forage, residual forage, of that year's growth will help protect the crown of that plant through the wintertime and provide some remaining leaf material to continue to produce energy for that plant for its root reserves through the wintertime. The last thing, and the most important thing to consider, is allowing your cool season grasses the opportunity to grow without grazing pressure during certain times of the year. The most important time of the year is the period of rapid growth. This can start as early as middle March or as late as sometime in April, depending on where your location is and what your elevation is. But that period of rapid growth is the most critical period of time for those cool season grasses. Once they start to put on green growth in the springtime, they're working hard to store energy for their roots and their other life processes that need to occur. That period ends when that cool season grass has produced a seed head and those seeds are mature. This can happen around the 1st of June to the 1st of July, again depending on your location. But allowing that period of rapid growth to occur is critical for the health of those plants. The most damaging time to graze your cool season grasses is from first green up until seed set of those grasses. So allowing those grasses a full opportunity to grow during that rapid growth window or recover if they've been grazed during that rapid growth window is critical for the health of your grasses. So if you want to have highly productive pastures and decrease weed competition, you need to remember those three things: frequency, intensity, and allowing opportunity for growth and regrowth of your cool season grass species. They are the most important ones in your pasture. Keeping them healthy and productive will keep the undesirable plants at bay and keep your pastures producing nice high quality forage for your grazing animals. It makes your land healthy and it makes your land productive and it makes you a good steward of Wyoming's resource. From the University of Wyoming Cooperative Extension Service, I'm Dallas Mount.